The Hero Slayer is hands down one of the best pixelated roguelike, or better roguelite, games out there. It is developed by the game studio Southpaw Games, published by Neovis, and is available on Steam. The game has an amazingly cute art style. Just look at it. Look at the skeleton and its tiny teeth. Okay, back on topic. First, let's talk about the UI. In the left lower corner, you can see both the classes you currently have equipped. To the right of it, you have your HP bar. Above that, you have the two skills and the two skills of the second class you have equipped. To the right of it, you have your usable item, and to the right of that, you have your buff and debuff tracker, as it's tracking both buffs and debuffs. To the right of that, you have your currency counter, the counter for bones, gold, and dark quartz. And in the lower right hand corner, you have the minimap and the counter for remaining enemies. In the top left corner, you have a timer. In Skul, you'll always start with the basic class Skul in the Tower of the Demon Lord, where 5 NPCs reside in if you have progressed far enough in the game and freed the NPCs out of captivity. To be precise, one of the NPCs is for cosmetic only. It's the Armored Knight. One NPC is for rouge-lite perks. It's the Witch. 3 of the NPCs will give you starter perks at every run in exchange for dark quartz. One will provide you with 2 items. One will provide you with 2 different classes. And one will give you a temporary buff. Before we go over the roguelite perks, let me explain the 3 types of classes in Skul. There are the power type classes with high HP, high damage, a single aerial attack, slow attack speed, and bad mobility. Then there are the speed type classes, which are the exact opposite of the power type classes, with high mobility, high attack speed, multiple area attacks, low HP, and low damage. And the last type of classes are the balance type, which contain mostly caster types, but for example the base class is a balance type. The balance type classes have normal HP, normal damage, and normal mobility. Now, let's go over the roguelite perks. Those perks are divided in 3 categories: Skull, Bone, and Spirit. With exception of the perks in the third column, every perk works on every type of class. You can unlock the perks in exchange for dark quartz, which you will obtain from killing enemies. The higher ranks of perks are unlocked if you bought the perk below at least once. In Skul, there are 4 types of rarities: common, rare, unique, and legendary, for classes and items alike. And only the legendary rarity has a visual indicator. Every item in Skul has 2 passive perks, which when stacked increase the bonus they give. Some of those perks are more useful to you, and some of those perks are less useful to you. Some are just amazing overall, like those 4. Every perk has its use. It just depends on your playstyle. Most classes in Skul have a pool of skills, from which 2 skills are randomly chosen the moment you pick up the skull of the class. Some classes have fixed skills, but mostly legendary classes. Skills can be changed if you find a specific present random NPC which you can free, and in return you will randomly change your skills into better ones. Every class in Skul has a legendary form, except for the Dead Cells class. You can upgrade those classes in exchange for bones and a spider-like NPC that will appear at the start of every new biome and on the next stage after you fought a mini-boss. Bones can be obtained if you salvage classes or the skulls of classes you don't intend to use. Every round of Skul starts the same. You respawn in the Tower of the Demon Lord and jump down. At the bottom, you will have to choose one of two doors from 3 possible. The door seen here is a treasure room, which will reward you with a random item. The door on the right seen here will reward you with a random class, and the door on the left seen here will reward you with more gold than the other 2 options. For the next part, I will try to explain everything alongside some gameplay. As you can see here, there's a green tentacle-like trap which will try to hit me if I stay too close to it for too long. As I make my way towards the last 2 initial enemies, you can see the purple-haired treant has been highlighted, which will signal that he's about to make an attack that should be avoided. After the initially spawned enemies are defeated, there will be a second wave with more enemies. After those enemies are defeated as well, you can head to the exit of the map, where the reward for clearing the map will spawn. You can't proceed further if you haven't killed all enemies on the map or opened your treasure. On the next map you can see barrels marked with an explosive sign, which will do exactly that if you hit them and propel you forward. Next we can see the green cross, which is a shrine for the enemies that will provide them with a useful buff. There are different kinds of shrines and every shrine has a different buff. The green cross will provide them with healing over time. If such a shrine is destroyed by you, you will gain the buff for a period of time. Next up and last on this map, we have a encounter with a present random NPC, which will give us a reward if we freed him and helped him. This NPC rewards us with a random class for a sacrifice of our health. On the next 2 maps, we can see a lot of terrain restricting elements in the game. This time, those elements are thorny vines, which will damage you if you touch them. We can also see some sort of jump pad, which will be present in every terrain in a different shape. After completing the first 3 stages, the door at the end will lead to the shop area. At this point, I cut to a different run, show off all possible NPCs in the shop area. First, we start off with the cook. The cook always has one kind of dish, which will replenish some of your health and give you a temporary buff for a set amount of stages. Next, we have the merchant. The merchant always has 3 items, which you can all buy if you have enough gold. For gold, you can even re-roll those items. Next, we have the headless knight, which will exchange your current class for the class that is in front of him. After that, we have the smith, who will have a usable item to purchase. And last, we have the merchant for dark wards, who will have a special item. After you've visited the first shop, you have to fight a mini-boss. Throughout the run, there will be multiple mini-boss fights happening, as well as multiple boss fights. Most of the time, those fights will be happening close after you've visited a shop. The first mini-boss fight does not provide that much of a challenge. But as you progress in the run, those mini-boss fights will become quite challenging, as well as those boss fights. Throughout the run, you will sometimes encounter challenges. Some will test your mobility and others will test your combat abilities, but most of them will be challenging. And other times, luck will be in your favor and you will find random treasures on the map, which you can destroy and get gold. Now that you have a basic understanding about the game, let me explain why I think Skul is hands down one of the best roguelite games out there. First of all, the art style is amazing, but that is true for a couple roguelites out there. You see, the variety of enemies is not too overwhelming. The amount of different enemies and different attack patterns is not that great. There are several enemy types which will be present in every different biome with upgraded versions of skills. For example, one of the big knights in the first biome will be present in some kind in one of the later biomes with a triple or quadruple combo attack and a charge ability with a much bigger range, which will be highlighted if casted by the enemy. Now, those indications always are on point. You see, if any mob is highlighted, you know for certain that this attack is going to go through, so you have to avoid it or dodge it with an iframe. While playing the game, the difficulty steadily increases. There's no power spike except for some of the bosses. Most of the stages between bosses are easily or moderately dealt with. Even the kind of mechanics like upgrading your class is pretty amazing. If you don't get lucky enough to get a legendary class, you still have the possibility of achieving so by collecting bone fragments and upgrading the one class you choose to play, as well as the option to re-roll the items in the shop if you have enough money, that is. As well as the roguelite perks are not that big of a deal to progress further in the game, but they are, for most of the part, not essential. You can get far in a run even without having bought every perk, which is quite hard to handle for most roguelite RPGs. Since most roguelites will be a breeze to play if you bought all the roguelite upgrades, or will be a nightmare if you haven't bought them. And despite Skul being a roguelite RPG, the game has a pretty nice story, which I will not talk about any further, since it will alter your own impression about it. The high amount of variety in classes and their playstyle makes the game an ever alternating experience. No run will be the same, since there are about 40 different classes, which have up to 4 different rarities, as well as about 80 to 90, maybe 100 items, which in combination will be perfect recipe for diversity. And even after completing the game the first time, it's not that easy to beat it the second time. I, for myself, had a lot of fun playing Skul, and I hope you enjoy it too. Hopefully this video prepared you well enough to play the game. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.